Welcome to Marketing Cupcakes, a quantitative marketing podcast where we bring you the latest techniques in marketing analytics, data science, systems integrations, growth hacking, guerrilla marketing, and data architecting.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Marketing Cupcakes. I'm your host, James Gilbert, and today our topic is the most common challenges marketers face when implementing Marketo and ways that you can fix them. Today we have a guest speaker that has contributed a lot on the Marketo community, and really excited to have him on. His name's Joshua Hill. So I'm going to let him introduce himself and what he's all about.
Thanks so much, James. I'm Josh Hill, and I'm the author of Marketing Rockstar Guy, which is a source for Marketo information, marketing technology, and I really work at the intersection of marketing, sales, and technology to help firms achieve funnel visibility and channel offer attribution. And as James mentioned, I have been a big contributor to the Marketo community over the years, have led or participated in over 40 marketing automation projects at firms of all types and sizes. And my background is in B2B sales and demand generation marketing, typically with leading tech and media firms. And my view is that MarTech follows a strategy that's about supporting the customer experience. And one of the things that I do is help firms tell their story automatically and at scale. I'm really delighted to be here and hope to share some tips and possibly learn from you.
Awesome. Super excited to have Josh on. He's been incredible to learn from. I remember when I very first started off in Marketo, Josh was one of the main people that I followed everywhere. I read his blog because he knows Marketo very, very well. So Josh, the first question I have for you are, a lot of companies face challenges when they're implementing a platform like Marketo. And I would be curious to hear from you what some common challenges companies face and how you've addressed some of those.
Well, that's a big question. I think probably not something we can address in even an hour, but I can give you a lot of tips based on those projects that I've worked with, the different kinds of situations that I've encountered, and it really boils down to not achieving sales marketing alignment or business process decisions before implementation. Now, that seems really simplistic. But anytime I've come across a situation where someone's asked me to come in and help them, I'd say for at least half the time it comes down to no decisions have been made about the business process. How do we hand off leads to sales? Has sales bought into the idea of better defining the funnel? Has sales bought into the idea of getting marketing qualified leads and not just doing smile and dial? The other half of the time, it's often marketers not really understanding how to use a platform like Marketo. A lot of B2B marketers are self-taught or learned on the job, which is fine. I certainly learned on the job. But you've got to spend time to figure out the discipline and the funnel ideas, and companies that are just purchasing Marketo often haven't really defined those processes, again, with sales or even within marketing. Thing that I find companies doing when they call me up and ask for help is they're just trying to do too much. They want to achieve the vision that Marketo sets out, which is great, right? I think you've probably seen this too, where Marketo is really great at selling the vision of having full funnel visibility, or HubSpot or Eloqua, and that's not really easy to achieve. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, that's the same thing with me. I'll tell you what, at the companies that I've worked for and implemented Marketo, it's the same concept. People don't quite understand what marketing really is about before they implement technology. And then they expect the technology to work before they've actually thought through the process and thought through how everything's going to tie together. And so that's good to hear that we're not the only ones seeing that, and we're not the only ones hearing that. So good comments.
Oh, yeah.
So my second question for you, Josh, is whenever somebody implements a marketing automation platform, no matter what it is, everyone wants to get the most bang for their buck, right? So what are ways or how do marketers make the most out of Marketo right out of the box?
That's, again, a big question. So let's talk a little bit about preparing for that. And I'll come back to the specific things that you can do in Marketo from day one. So we know everyone wants to get into the system and achieve full funnel visibility, or have predictive marketing or predictive leads, and be able to say with really good certainty, if you give me another $50,000, I can give you 500 leads and $500,000 in pipeline by the end of the quarter. Some people are really good at this because they either have the systems or they spend a lot of time building a model out. A lot of companies haven't done this, or they expect Marketo to do this. The reality is Marketo can help, but it doesn't help from day one. So I've created a MarTech maturity model to help companies understand that adoption path on a general MarTech scale, and then to delve into each stage to talk about specific things. If you don't mind, I want to talk about that a little bit before we talk about the specific items in Marketo that you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I put this on SlideShare in my website if anyone's interested in taking a look. If you take a look at this, especially before you implement Marketo or marketing automation platform, or if you're switching systems, think about where you are in these 6 or 7 stages. Stage 0 is about transforming your marketing, and that really goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. Have you gone through a marketing transformation? Are you using and thinking about inbound leads? Are you looking at content? Have you achieved some level of sales marketing alignment? When I did this the first time, I would say that I went through this whole stage 0 over a couple of years. This was almost 10 years ago. And I don't think you have to take 2 years to do it. But the fact that we had gone through that transformation kind of organically helped a lot when I purchased Marketo, because a lot of these decisions were made. Sales was used to the idea of lead ranking and prioritization. They were used to the idea of having content-based events, for example, and getting higher quality leads and having a handoff process. And Marketo only forces you to think harder about the details behind that. And then once you've done that, you can go into stage 1, which is really about finding a marketing automation platform like Marketo and automating those processes you've already decided on. That's like the first thing you should do. So if you purchase Marketo or implementing it for the first time, you want to think about lead scoring before you even purchase, ideally. You want to think about mapping out, doing a process chart of those processes with sales, and calling each stage a name. And Marketo provides a lot of good examples. Serious Decisions provides a lot of good examples. But make it work for your business, right? If you don't like the names and you have a different way of doing it, that's fine. Call each funnel stage something that makes sense. But decide on that and automate that in the first wave. And stage 2 is kind of sounds the same, but it's a little bit different. It's about automating lead quality and automating lead routing. And you'll find that you may have to transform some of those processes, or you might kind of do stage 1 and stage 2 a bit concurrently. But at this point, you want to do it at larger scale. So that instead of deduping on that manually, or you're routing leads to sales, determine all of these buyer personas, you determine the scoring system, and you're doing it automatically. Then in stage 3, you're taking the inherent capability of Marketo to do engagement programs, to do drip campaigns, to do lead nurturing. But what I'd really urge, and I think people are starting to get the idea here, that you have to plan that out. I have some content around storytelling and lead nurturing. Think about the audience. If you get inbound leads and they sign up, don't just send them 10 emails with the content that you already have. Think about the story you want to tell people. Are you really looking at the stages they're going through? Are you really weaving them through the path? Are you telling an exciting story about how you're going to make them the hero? These are all things you have to think about. So what a lot of people do is they come to me and they say, we have Marketo for the last 6 months. We're not sure we're using it properly, which often goes to lead scoring automation process, and we're just using it for batch and blast. And they're like, we kind of know this isn't really what it's supposed to be for. I don't know if you've had that experience too.
Man, I tell you, that's like that's exactly what we've had challenges. The same kind of thing. And it's really good to hear you talk about the story that you need to create, because people often get lead nurturing and drip campaigns confused with, all right, we're going to send out 5 email blasts over the next 5 months, but the content doesn't correlate, or it might correlate, but it might not build on the experience, right? So number 1 needs to build on number 2, and number 2 needs to build on number 3, and so on. And that's a big challenge, I think, that a lot of people face, is that, let's nurture, let's just send a bunch of emails, and that's not what it's about. So it's good to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, and we could have a whole session just on stage 3 and how to do nurturing and really take advantage of the automation, rather than just making it about, every week we're going to send out a blast of whatever content we happen to have. Marketo can do that, and it can do it automatically. But I think there's that trite phrase, like, you can automate a bad process, and it'll just do bad things faster, or you can have a good process that works better. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and I really urge people to think hard about doing it well and preparing to do it well. And the nice thing about installing Marketo, or even if you've had it for a couple of years and maybe you're feeling like, gee, we really aren't taking advantage of the automation and the storytelling capabilities, you can go right back and think hard about how do you want to rebuild it and do that. Doesn't necessarily matter which stage you're in, but if you go through the stages carefully, you will have much, much more success with Marketo. Now, stage 4 is about funnel visibility. This is where we start to get into why people got excited about Marketo in the first place, right? It's the slide everybody sees during the sales pitch or on Marketo's website. This is really cool stuff if you can get it right. There's a lot of planning involved, and if you've really spent the time in stage 0 and stage 1 to think about the business process, the funnel stages, the kinds of reports you might want to get, you can achieve this pretty quickly. And by quickly, I mean maybe within a year, depending on how much time everyone has. I know a lot of people don't really have super amounts of time, even if there's a dedicated marketing operations person at the company. So there's a lot of data involved, there's a lot of tweaking that needs to happen across Marketo and the CRM to really do this well. And even if you didn't set everything up the first day, and you probably wouldn't, take the time to think about it now, once you have lead nurturing mastered, and go back with sales and have a continual process of understanding what the funnel should look like. And then you can build it out. And ideally, if you've had the chance to really think about this at the start, you'll have a lot of the data already. It just might not be reportable. Marketo obviously has Revenue Cycle Explorer, and that can be a really great tool for getting people used to the idea of funnel reporting and conversion rates. There are a lot of other tools that can plug into Marketo and collect that data as well. It really just depends on your company, your capabilities, and what you're really trying to achieve.
Josh, what are some of your favorite tools to utilize that with?
Other than Marketo's RC?
Yeah.
Well, Tableau obviously has a lot of capabilities around cohort analysis, which is really what you want to do. I've used Good Data. That has interesting capabilities. Full Circle CRM has some interesting capabilities, and I usually explore that with some of my clients. Right Funnel has some interesting capabilities as well.
All good platforms, definitely.
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily one killer app for this. So it's really about defining the reports and your goals for using those reports in advance, and then figuring out the plan for getting the data out of that. Because a lot can be done without one of those tools, but at some point you will need some sort of reporting tool.
Yeah, and I can't stress it. Yeah. I can't stress enough with our listeners how important it is to take the time to build the data model the right way, so that you can get to the point where you have full funnel visibility, like Josh was talking about. You really need to spend a lot of time with your data model to ensure that you can report on it accurately.
Oh, absolutely. And at least in my experience, very few companies have reached a point where they're totally happy with it. So often something that is in flux. And I think that creates an opportunity to have what I call data doubt, where perhaps sales doesn't want to believe that kind of data, or the CFO, for example, might not really trust the data coming out of that. And that's unfortunate because you really need to have that in order to get that seat at the revenue table, right?
Yeah.
But that does take time. So, I'm just going through these stages very quickly on this podcast. But if you look at my model, it's totally reasonable not to reach funnel visibility or even attribution within 2 years. And I think that's where a lot of companies get tripped up because they have outsized expectations from the vendor or from themselves, and they never take the time to plan it out and say, this is what's really realistic. So that's why I'm urging people to think ahead and be very careful and deliberate about their steps. I know a lot of companies like to go fast, or they have executives that just say, go do it. And that leads to a lot of dislocation or losing the baseline, as I've heard. Right? I think we've all experienced this where we throw out the old system and rebase everything on a new system, and the reports are no longer comparable. Now we have no idea what happened over the last 5 years.
Yeah. Yep, that is so true.
Yeah, so that's, unfortunate. I think stage 5 and stage 6, kind of depend on how, again, those reporting tools and how you want to go, right? So stage 5 is really about attribution and allocation, building on that funnel visibility and saying, we can look at the channel offer matrix at the funnel stages and the money. What could we do with that, right? Are webinar assets being, shown on LinkedIn, providing us with fast-moving leads? Maybe, maybe not. And that's what people are really looking for, and it's even harder to achieve. And you'll definitely need some sort of tools and deliberate reporting to do that. And then a lot of people have been talking about predictive, maybe less so in the last year, but this is something Marketo has offered, or at least wants you to do. And there are a lot of tools out there to help do statistical analysis and decide if accounts or leads are more likely to move to a certain stage. I certainly think that should be explored. And I know technically it's possible to add those tools in early. I would avoid them until you're really feeling comfortable with your funnel and attribution. And the reason for that is some companies may not have a lot of data for a year or two. And often it requires a realignment with sales, marketing, and the funnel system to get used to the idea that a computer is deciding this and not just whatever scoring system one made up. I'm not saying that you should make up the scoring system, but that's the reality when you get in stage 1 and stage 2 and you're deciding on how to rank leads.
Great points, Josh. We're actually going to, if it's okay with you, we're going to end there so we can try and keep it under 20 minutes. But once again, Josh Hill,
yeah, sure.
Marketing Rockstar author, he is a great source of knowledge. So I highly recommend taking a look at his website and his blog. And thanks for joining us again today, Josh.
Sure, absolutely. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Marketing Cupcakes, an Endure podcast. For more great content and to stay up to date on the latest marketing techniques, visit endure.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and rate the podcast. We'll catch you next time on Marketing Cupcakes.